Hi, my name is Katie Hannon. I'm in Deviance and Social Control Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10:50 to 11:40. I don't have a major. I'm an undecided College of Arts and Sciences student, and I'm a first year from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. After watching the film Citizenfour, I have so many feelings about it. Not good ones, but basically the film is about how the NSA and the government is completely watching and controlling virtually every aspect of a American citizen's life, and that leads globally into the world's life and how we're all just completely watched. It begins with Laura Poitras being reached out to by this citizenfour, an encrypted email message from someone, their source, that gives them all this information about the government, about the NSA, what they're doing, and how they're tracking everyone. And she works with Edward Snowden and Glenn Greenwald. Edward Snowden, a employee of the NSA, who is kind of their voice, giving them all this information. And Glenn Greenwald, who works for The Guardian in London. He's a news reporter, he writes stories, and he's their outlet, along with Laura herself, who is also working in the media, and she's an outlet. This citizenfour, this voice that reaches out to them, entrusts Laura with all of this information, knowing that she'd be able to get it out to the American people. So basically, the NSA has intercepted all of Americans' lives. So, for example, if you have your Metro card linked to your debit card, then they can watch where you go and what you buy. And then the second that they have your cell phone records, they know exactly what you're doing and where you are and who you're with, and they can link it up with other people's Metro and debit cards that are going in the same routes as you, and then be able to figure out who you've interacted with that day. And you could have no threat to American society or the lives of anyone in the whole world. Globally, you could have no impact, but they're still going to track you. So it came out in 2013 that so many providers like AT&T and Verizon had let the NSA hack into their files, and they were just taking billions and billions and billions and billions of files from people per minute, and it was insane. Just gathering all this data as companies began to rack up the amount of data from phone calls, emails, credit card charges, Google searches, anything that you possibly had on your devices. It became metadata, which was a way for them to figure out basically exactly what you were doing. So, like in class, we talked about the examples of someone growing marijuana, or someone who was going to call Planned Parenthood and they tracked who they called. They called their sister, and it was because they were getting an abortion. They were able to track down who you were. And the moment that happens, it creates this description. So if they have someone who they think is building a bomb based on the places they went, things they bought, what they do, who they're talking to, where they're going, but they're not, then there's a false accusation of someone. And we talked about the death by a drone, how you could just call the wrong number and call a drone, and that's the last thing you see. And Edward Snowden commented that he could go to this place in the NSA's files and just watch in real time a live stream of all of this drone footage from around the world, just tracking people, watching people's houses, just watching everything that they're doing. So Edward Snowden was an infrastructure analyst for the NSA, and his whole mindset was that it was going to be state power versus people's ability to oppose that power. And his job was helping make that state power more powerful and bigger and better. And he had to watch the Obama administration lose this promise to the people and actually end up fighting for the power and creating it and strengthening it. So these people, Laura, Glenn, Edward, they all were completely self-sacrificing and putting themselves out there because they believed in what this was. Edward ended up completely just leaving his significant other while she was on vacation, and she had no idea where he was or what he was doing, and didn't see her for years at a time as he became this refugee in a different country. Glenn's significant other was detained for 9 hours under a terrorism act in an airport when he was just coming back home to Brazil, when he was no one who needed that amount of security. When Glenn is asked if he's going to keep reporting, if he's had threats from the government, he says, yes, I'm going to keep reporting. Yes, I'm going to keep writing. Yes, I'm going to keep telling the story because it matters. One of the main themes of the film was the entire idea and just the pure fact of what the NSA was doing, and how in court they openly said, no, we're not doing this. We're not tracking their phone calls. We're not reading their emails. We're not listening. We're not watching, when they were. And they were completely doing that. And had teamed up with and hacked into Verizon, AT&T, YouTube, Facebook, any sort of social media streaming platform that messages were being exchanged, anything was being put out there, they were listening, they were following, they were reading, they were collecting this metadata of all US citizens, not just people that they thought might be a crime threat or a terrorism threat, everyone. And that really ties into who it could be and how they are watching all these people. And you could have someone who went here, talked to this person, bought this and did that, add it all together. Yes, maybe they're doing something like criminal, or maybe they're not. And then there's false accusations, and then they end up with 1.2 million on all these different 1.2 million people on all these different watch lists, most of which shouldn't have been there. And it's really similar to what we see in Abu Ghraib, how half those prisoners were just picked up because of the type of car that they drove. There was nothing against them. It's this whole idea of security and surveillance. Snowden was charged with 3 felonies, 2 of which were under the Espionage Act, making it so a spy can't take the intelligence that they know, national secrets, and give them to a foreign country to hurt the US. Whereas he was just doing it in the public's interest, in the public's best interest, trying to get this word out there and tell everyone. We talked a lot about euphemistic labeling, and the NSA base in Germany was called the Dagger Complex. And to me, that is just not a comforting title. The entire film brings this feeling of insecurity when all they're trying to do is promote security and create a safer place. And it all started after 9/11, not even a week after 9/11, when they decided they were going to just scan everything. That was in the best interest of American people, because they wanted to be able to know what people were doing. If there was any criminal activity, they wanted to stop it. But watching this film and learning about things that I kind of knew existed, but now I know actually did exist and do exist and are very much so happening in our world, it causes a really big insecurity. It's not assuring to know that Apple, Facebook, my emails, all my texts, Verizon, every company that I've invested my money in and my time and my trust to is completely just scanning and watching and seeing everything that I'm doing and tracking me, and people can know where I am at all times and know what I'm doing at all times. It is nice to know that there is this program that, if someone was if there was criminal activity to be found, they could find it. But there's so much data going in and out of those databases every second that it's hard to believe that they would actually be able to find the one that was causing the problem. this idea of the internet and technology and life being completely altered by what we're capable of and what the government is capable of and what our national security is doing to not secure us is very similar to this new trend of cryptocurrency that I've read a lot about and kind of seen a lot in the media, that Bitcoin blew up and people who have invested in Bitcoin have their stocks have just like gone sky high, and now one Bitcoin is worth like upwards of $20,000, and it's this cryptocurrency that makes it a very, very easy target for criminal activity. It's a criminal's playground. It's an online anonymous way to transfer money to and from for any reason. And it became this game of cat and mouse, of law enforcement chasing after cryptocurrency and Bitcoin criminals, trying to figure out how they're doing it. And as they're identifying this criminal activity, criminals are just developing bigger, better, more powerful, and stronger versions, creating complex technologies and programs to make things more anonymous and make it so they're able to exchange money for like tax evasion, the dark web of contraband, money laundering, transactions of just anything, extortion, and theft, because Bitcoin theft is huge, so it's easy in the grand scheme of things. And then it gave birth to altcoins, which became this alternative form of Bitcoin, another cryptocurrency that was anonymous, or more anonymous than Bitcoin was. Then came zero-proof technology, which completely just erased the sender, the receiver, the amount, all of it from any sort of ledger. So there was just a transaction, but no information about it and nothing they would know about it. As the NSA is tracking every single thing that every single person does, there's still numerous crimes happening. Something striking that Edward Snowden said was, no matter what we say or do or see in this situation is eventually going to be public record, because there is nothing that we're doing that isn't being watched. When he was working on a laptop, he covered his head and the laptop in a little pillowcase so that overhead viewing was impossible. He had to unplug the hotel phones so that nothing was listening. They, in conversation with Glenn and Edward, they were talking in a weird, broken English because they'd say the middle of their sentences, but anything a little bit important, they had to write down and show to each other so that nothing could be heard, and then completely destroy that evidence. The NSA didn't discriminate who they tracked when they tracked them. It was no longer just a system for finding acts of terrorism. It just became a system to track every single person in the United States. Citizenfour is an extremely eye-opening documentary and created a whole other sense of confusion and questioning and distrust in our government, how our country's being run, our presidency, our past presidencies, our international endeavors, how everything is run. It's given me an insight that I think a lot of people would benefit from knowing and seeing. There's a generational difference in technology, and that's obvious, and we know that, but it's a whole new level of why we shouldn't be so on our phones and so on our laptops. But maybe we should. Maybe we should be tracked. Maybe if you don't want to be tracked, you have something to hide. We don't know. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But Citizenfour really made me question a lot of things, and I'm really glad we got to watch it in class and on our own time, and I'll definitely be watching it again. Thanks.